Moving on from the ISO 45001 series, we'll explore risk assessment over the coming weeks. Now, risk assessment is one of the most widely used tools in occupational health and safety. It is documented, audited, and signed off at multiple levels. Yet, in many organizations, it has very little influence on how work is actually carried out. There is often a gap between what is written in a risk assessment and what happens in real operations. This series is focused on that gap, moving risk assessment from paper to practice. From an occupational health perspective, risk assessment is a structured process. It involves identifying hazards, evaluating the likelihood and severity of harm, and determining the controls required to reduce that risk to an acceptable level. In occupational health and safety, this is called the so far as reasonably practicable principle. It simply means reducing risk to a level where further reduction will be grossly disproportionate to the effort, time, and cost required. But more importantly, risk assessment is a system for understanding exposure, not just what could go wrong, but how likely it is to go wrong and whether the current controls within the organization are strong enough to prevent it. The complete risk assessment process involves several key elements. First, hazard identification. This means recognizing sources of harm across tasks, environments, equipment, and human factors such as fatigue and capability. The second is risk evaluation. This is where we assess likelihood, severity, and who may be affected. So it shifts the conversation from is this dangerous to what is the level of exposure. The third are the control measures. What is already in place? What is missing? And are these controls aligned with the hierarchy of controls? The fourth, residual risk. Once controls are applied, what level of risk remains and is this acceptable and under what conditions? The fifth is communication. A risk assessment that is not understood by the people doing the work is as good as not having one. And finally, we have the review. Risk assessment should change as work changes, shift as the environment shifts, and adjust as new tasks emerge. In practice, when many systems begin to break down is when risk assessment becomes documents rather than decision-making tools. So controls are assumed to work, but they are not routinely tested, and the way work is performed begins to drift away from what is written little by little till there's an entire deviation. A functional risk assessment shapes how work is planned, resourced, and supervised, and it gives leaders visibility over where real exposure exists as against where it is just documented. So this series will explore how to strengthen that system, how to align risk assessment with real work, and how to evaluate control effectiveness, and how to position risk assessment as part of everyday operational management, not just a compliance requirement, but a working system.